called Mental Health Matters featuring Sister Berak Hussain. My name is Tuba Murtaza and I'll be your MC for today. So today is our last day of our series. I can't believe it's our last day already. First of all, I think that I'm sad because it's our last day, but like the time flew by, which is a bit crazy. So before we get started, please join me in reciting Surah Tawheed. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. Well, alhamdulillah, like I said, it is our last day of our three-part mental health series. Thank you so much, Sister Rock, for sharing all your wisdom with us. We truly appreciate it. For those who are new to the seminar, I highly recommend checking out the last two videos of this session. Some really great content and some really great wealth of knowledge shared by Sister Brock. For those who are new, and just to give a bit of a intro to Sister Brock, she is a registered psychotherapist in Ottawa and is an international student counselor at Carleton University. In social media, she's known as the Muslim counselor. So she's all over. So she's in Facebook, Insta, Twitter. Again, some really great content in her pages. So make sure to check those out. She's worked on many mental health initiatives, both locally and internationally, and believes in helping the clients heal through the soul. So I think last week we finally got some insight on what she means by healing through the soul. Just to give a bit of a recap on the first two sessions. So in the first session, it was an intro. So we learned about it. We got an introduction to mental health, and we learned about some mental health stats. We debunked some common mental health myths, and we learned about the barriers and resources to mental health experts. Last week, we took a deep dive in learning about the development of Islamic counseling and clinical practice. We took a look at the relationship between religion and science, emphasizing on how the nafs and how it relates to the peace of mind. Sister Brock also spoke about Ghazali's 6 steps to change and how we can use that to bring a positive change into our lives. And finally, ending the session, with how we can use our namaz and Quran as a source of healing. So, inshallah, today we'll continue with our journey to learn more about mental health. Similar to last week, the YouTube comments will be on. So please make sure to engage. You can put any comments or any questions that you may have. For questions specifically not related to what Sister Brock is currently talking about, we do have the Google form link that was included in the email earlier. So if you can include your questions in that form, and we will go over those questions at the end of the session. Well, without further ado, Sister Rock, I can't believe it's the last day. Thank you so much for all your knowledge. We truly appreciate it. How are you, by the way?
Assalamu alaikum. I'm doing well. I hope you're doing well.
Alhamdulillah, I'm good. Last week, like after our session, prayed Maghrib and Isha, and I felt numb and tingly, like in a good way. Like I felt like after my namaz, I felt so peaceful and I felt like I was floating. So
Yeah.
alhamdulillah, it was an incredible experience. So thank you so much. I'm so excited to see what you have for us today. So the floor is all yours.
Bless you. That's such amazing feedback to hear, that your salah last week was impacted so differently than it usually is. And I think, once we open up ourselves spiritually and we're in that calm mental space, it's amazing what can come in and what we can give out as well, right? Which is why we say learn from the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Ala bi dhikrillah tatma'inna al-qulub. And you experience that from it in an actual literal sense after opening up your spirit and looking at the words of the adhan, you know, hayya ala al-falah, come to that self-development of success, right? So it's beautiful to
Right.
hear that. I'm always happy to hear that. And I think a lot of us who went into that salah that night felt that. So we tried to continue that, right? We want to continue that type of energy moving into all of our salahs, right? And thank you so much for that summary of the first two sessions. And inshallah, today we'll be doing our final one for now, inshallah. And we can definitely do more sessions in different areas of mental health because there's so much to delve into. This series, I would say, is a good 101 starter, you know, to understanding mental health and looking at how we take care of ourselves. And so what this session is all about today, I'm going to jump right into it by sharing our screen here. All right, so tell me what you see. You see the actual screen? Is it clear?
Yes, I see the PowerPoint slide. Yeah, it was the actual screen.
Excellent, excellent. Khair, inshallah. So yeah, inshallah, today we'll be doing our last part of the Mental Health Matters series. We'll be taking a look at mindfulness stress release, learning how to maintain a healthy lifestyle for balanced mental health. So take notes as we go along with this as well. There's going to be some interesting facts. At the end, inshallah, after going through a variety of different things, we'll be also taking a look at a really nice meditation to sum up our 3 sessions, inshallah. So something to look forward to as well. So again, we start with this beautiful ayah from the Quran. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Say it with me. Ala bi dhikrillah tatma'inna al-qulub. Verily, in the remembrance of Allah, the hearts find rest, serenity, that tranquility. And inshallah, we're going to learn how to find that tranquility through a different form of reflection to understanding what stress is all about. So we're going to also be interactive. You know, I'm going to ask questions because it's just not fun just talking. I need some feedback as well. You have the answer there in terms of what stress is, but I'd like to hear from you, Sister Tuba, as well as our audience in terms of what do you think stress is when you hear it or see it, aside from this definition, where it's the body's physical response to a perceived demand or threat. There's a missing space there between A and perceive. But what is it that you think of or feel when you see or hear the word stress?
I know for me, like when we say stress, like the first thing that comes into mind is probably the most stressful situation in my life, which was university. That's like I just get flashbacks and minor PTSD from university and exams and all the deadlines. So that's what I think about when we say stress.
That makes sense. Makes sense absolutely. When as a student or newly graduated person, or even later on, depending on what your experiences were with university, definitely stress comes to mind. Yeah. How about our audience members? Any ideas that come to mind when you hear the word stress or what you feel as well? You felt like almost reoccurring PTSD, right? Yeah, our audience members absolutely can share their ideas in this chat or send them anonymously as well. But I think it's good to have that interaction back and forth. Definitely when I think of stress, I think of Iraqi hot weather. Like 47, 50 degrees, that sounds stressful to me.
Oh wow. Yeah.
Physical
Oh my god.
response. I know we're at like 38, 37, I think this weekend here or right now in Ottawa. Add 10 to that, I can't imagine how hot that is. Yeah, actually we're at 33, which isn't too bad, but add another 20 to that, then you've got Iraq heat. That for me, it's stressful, right? So some people are mentioning interviewing, they get anxiety, public speaking gives them stress. That's actually a very common stressor that people encounter, getting social anxiety or speaking in public. It's funny because some of us don't. Some of us thrive on that. Some of us find it very provoking. You get almost that physical response of heart palpitations, shakes, right? Some people say moms may relate being needed all the time by kids and family. Absolutely, that can be very stressful because then you don't have a moment to yourself. You're being pulled in all directions and you yourself in that one moment just can't find the time for you because all of you is being pulled in so many different directions. That definitely can seem very stressful. So let's take a closer look at what stress is all about. And it's about that fight or flight response, right? So it's the release of our stress hormones, cortisol and adrenaline, which are released into our system, right? And what these hormones do is they have the effect of decreasing blood flow to the digestive tract, our kidneys, and our skin, which is why in that moment of that flight or fight moment, you're not really feeling hungry or having other desires. You're really in that moment of, I got to get out of here. I got to respond to this, right? And so that exposure of those stress hormones over a long period of time during chronic stress can impact our immune function, right? And it leaves our body more vulnerable to infection. And this is really interesting given the pandemic, where people were saying you got to take care of your stress during this time. You got to keep your immunity high, right? And I think a lot of us experienced a lot of stress just thinking about, what if we catch this virus? What if this? What if that? Right? So it's really important to understand how our bodies respond to stress so that we know how to reverse the impact of it. Inshallah, that's what we're going to take a closer look at here. You're going to be very comfortable with stress now, because stress is not necessarily a bad thing. Stress can be a positive thing because it can get you to go and put yourself into action, right? That is a positive thing, absolutely. So it's invaluable to understand how our stressors work. But when we take a look at long-term exposure to stress, that's not so much fun, right? Long-term exposure to stress takes a look at what is released into our system, right? So the heart rate can change, right? You can have heart disease, you can have hypertension, gastrointestinal problems, respiratory problems, you can have diabetes, right? Headaches. A lot of us can relate to these, those of us who've had long-term exposure to stress. Some of these things, the whole point, if you look at this list here, some of them are irreversible. And we don't want it to get to that point. We want to be able to reverse the impact of our stress. If it's irreversible, then we're taking a look at also perhaps medical treatment to help with some of these challenges with the long-term exposure to our stress hormones, right? So some can be mental, physical, behavioral, as well as physical, as you can see here. So when we take a look at the signs of our stress, a lot of the signs can go unnoticed, right? We may not pay attention to them. We may ignore them. They can also be physical signs of illnesses, and we just ignore them, right? So for example, some people could experience some chest pain. It could be a sign of stress, but it can also be a sign of a serious heart problem, which you don't want to ignore, right? Sometimes we have that attitude. If you remember in our first session, we explored some of the stigma and misconceptions about, especially when we looked at gender variances, are about toughening up, not sharing, that you only turn to God for help, nobody else, right? Well, here, this is not about toughening up. You could be ignoring something that you think that is a mental sign when in fact it could be a physical illness, and we don't want to overpass that, right? So looking further into stress here, let's take a look at sources of stress around us, right? Because sometimes we get bombarded with our stress, but we don't know which area it's coming from, right? So it could be the physical environment. That physical environment can include bright lights, noise, heat, like we said, cold and traffic. I'm just going to throw in a joke that it was this kind of morbid humor that I saw on an Iraqi channel one time, but it had to do with what I mentioned earlier about heat. And they were talking about, well, how can you stop conflict in the home, in the marital home in Iraq? And they were saying, get rid of the heat, and then that will solve the problem of conflict in the home, because the heat causes so much stress. Of course, it's an unrealistic situation to change, but you see even within that morbid humor, they're talking about how heat can cause a lot of stress, and it is absolutely a physical environment stressor, right? So it's really important to keep that in mind. Cold, I know here in Ottawa, we hit minus 35 just as easily as when we can hit plus 35, and that minus 35 can be pretty stressful for some people, right? Especially, let's say when there's not much sunlight during the day, it's cold to get out, you're more used to the sun and the warmth, and that this type of environment can really impact you. And of course, traffic. How many of us have been impacted by the stress and being in Toronto traffic, right? In Toronto traffic, that's one of the worst traffics, other than I think what I've seen in Baghdad in Iraq. That's pretty intense traffic as well. How's the traffic in your home country?
It's not that bad here in like Waterloo, Kitchener,
Yeah,
but I feel you, like in Toronto, like I feel like every time I've gone to Toronto, there's at least one accident. And there's just so many people and so many cars, like, and there's so much honking, like, stop.
I know, absolutely. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Middle Eastern countries, right, with the honking and stuff. See, we like press the beeper in the car to say hello to somebody. That's considered rude here, right? And so when you hear that beep beep, and I'm like, oh, flashbacks of nostalgia. I swear, this heat, as intense as it can be here, as soon as it gets to the hot, humid weather, I feel like as though I'm transported back to Iraq. So don't mind me if I'm bringing lots of examples of Iraq today. Those who've been to Iraq, especially in Ziyara and hot season, know exactly what I'm talking about, right? For me, it has personal connections of like heat and stress, because I went a few times when I was younger in university during summer times in the insanity of the heat. So it stayed with me. So let's take a look here in terms of social relationships. Those absolutely can be huge sources of stress. Aggressiveness, rudeness, conflict with friends, family, neighbors, not spending time with important people, lack of social support, loneliness, these can have a huge impact, right? Financial stress, absolutely. Taxes, bills, unplanned expenses, just trying to make ends meet, right? Organizational, when this comes to red tape, rules, regulations, deadlines, schoolwork, right? You mentioned that earlier, sister. Life events could range from death of a family member, loss of a job, illness, starting university, work promotions, birth of a child, marriage, winning the lottery. You notice we mentioned some happy life events. Those can be quite stressful as well. Having a child, that is a whole other world on its own, right? A marriage, a wedding, like birthday parties, whatever, all of these can be quite stressful because they are impacting your body's response. So lifestyle choices as well, as we can take a look here in terms of what substances you put into your body, including caffeine. Believe it or not, coffee and tea can have a huge impact on our stress levels. Time management, nutrition, sleep. Physiologically, it comes to poor health, physical illness, pregnancy, injury. So the list goes on and on with that. And if we take a look at the signs and symptoms as a result. So signs are signals, but symptoms are as a result, right? So we take a look here. We'll be coming back to this after. So we'll take a quick look now and then we'll get into more depth later, because this will also help us in managing our stress. So I'm looking at my own screen and I haven't changed there. There we go. So we're taking a look at physical signs, right? All the way from increasing heart rate to indigestion, sweating, fatigue, the list, you see that there. Behavioral signs could be from yelling, swearing, aggression, changes in eating, sleeping habits, nervousness, smoking, that could be increased, right? Mental signs could be anything from difficulty concentrating, memory, indecisiveness, confusion, loss of humor, bad dreams, indifference. You see this a lot with students, I find, right? Emotional signs can range from anxiety, anger, irritability, short temper, frustration, right? So a lot of these can show up, and it's really important that we recognize them as they happen, right? So continuing on with concepts of stress, and these are, and we'll come back to this big list here, but just having a deeper understanding of stress is to understand that for a demand to be evaluated as a stress producing, we must have the perception that the resources are significantly less than what we need, right? So this is your demand, your resources are here, hence this perception of that is what causes that stress, right? Resources could be what? Time, money, energy, intelligence, support from others, patience. And if we see that our perception is that these resources are lacking, then you could experience stress, right? For example, if you're prepared for an exam, that's time and intelligence, right? If you find that you haven't prepared properly, then you're going to feel less confident. Maybe you didn't have enough time. So then that perception of not having enough time to study or not prepared, it's going to make you feel stressed, right? Ways of thinking can also contribute to our stress. So negative thinking or self-talk, right? Discounting the positive and maximizing and just focusing on the negatives, right? Overgeneralizing, pessimism, overanalyzing, self-criticism, self-blame, exaggerating, perfectionism, demanding, awfulizing. These are all, and of course, here we are. Sorry about that. I gotta see that here. Let's go back here. So, and rigid black and white thinking. So these ways of thinking can absolutely contribute to our stress. Sometimes people say, well, hold on, it's really important that we hand in a perfect essay, or, the dinner has to be perfect, or everything we planned on the trip has to be perfect. This idea of perfectionism is probably one of the number one stressors I see with young people and students and people who are trying to practice faith. And we talked a lot about that last week, right? So this idea of perfectionism, we need to scrape it off. We strive towards perfection because only Allah is perfect, kamil, right? Only the Ahlul Bayt are free of sin, masumin, right? We can't be perfect like them, but we strive as an inspiration for us to go towards that perfection. And this line of thinking, if we can learn how to reframe it, we'll look at that later, but this idea of perfectionism, if we can just work with the best that we can in the moment without comparing ourselves to our past or the future, but rather just working with what you can in the moment, can go a long way in reducing our stressful thinking. All right, so let's go on to the next part now. This is where it's going to be a little bit more interactive. We're going to get some back and forth here. Now that we have a good, concise understanding of what stress is, how it impacts us, now let's look at how we can manage it, right? How we can take care of it. And this is all about our healthy lifestyle, right? So step one, we want to be able to identify if we are stressed. How can we identify if we are stressed? Well, let's take a look at the signs and symptoms, and we want to learn what our stress print is. Our individual stress print is almost identical to our individual fingerprint. Just like we have our own unique fingerprint, we have our own stress print. Now, this stress print will help us identify if we are indeed stressed, because it's really important to see what these are. It's just like our phone sending us a notification, right? When you get that notification, you're going to go check it, see what it's all about. Well, our brain and our body is sending us these signals, right, in the form of the signs and symptoms. So let's go back to that huge list of signs and symptoms where we want to be able to identify the notifications that our body sends us. So we're going to take a couple of minutes here where I'd like you to go through all of this, tick off or write down everything that you notice happens to you. And once you do that, after you go through it, I'd like you to select the top 5. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to do that, inshallah. So just we're going to add some sound effects while you go through that. Let me know when you're done, inshallah.
I think I'm good to go. Just waiting on others to comment as well.
Yeah, just comment on our screen. Let us know if you're ready. All right, so let's see here what we've got. Sister, you know I'm gonna ask you.
For sure.
So
I
what
felt
are
like
the top 5 that you noticed that you have?
I feel like I was going through all of them. I'm like, yep, yep, that's me, that's me. But I think like top five would definitely be like headaches. I get like really bad headaches. Um, sorry, frustration, irritability, bad dreams, and difficulty concentrating.
Those are pretty common, yeah. Thank you for sharing. I see somebody else has shared changes in sleep, changes in eating, headaches, fatigue, irritability. Yeah, yeah. I can relate to a lot of what you said as well. Mine has to do with sleep is impacted, eating is impacted, so I don't eat. I get very anxious. I notice I've got headaches when like really bad migraines with that stress. Fatigue definitely. Sometimes probably a little bit more than that. More like I said, anxious. So and energized in a bad way. Somebody mentioned here weight loss, change in sleep, fatigue. Yeah. So these are common factors that we see in a lot of people. Um, I find in students, yeah, youth that it's more around concentration and focus. They don't do well in school. They lose interest, right? Indecisiveness, the mind going blank. Uh, Definitely, there's a lot of stomach issues I find as well that people encounter, right? So this is great that we're all sharing this and that you're aware of that now. Now that you know what your stress print is, inshallah, next time your body's sending you these notifications, you are going to be aware ahead of time so you can be more proactive in doing something about it. So now that we've got that, let's take a look at our step 2. Okay, so step 1 was identifying if you're stressed. We need to do that. Step number 2 takes a look at looking for the cause. So identifying what the stressors are. So stress is usually related to change. So we want to go back and see the changes that took place in our life that has impacted that stressor to help us identify it. So we can narrow it down by seeing the changes related by looking at when these symptoms started, right? Maybe it happened about 2 weeks ago where you noticed your sleeping was off, right? So it's important to look at maybe what happened around that time when your sleep pattern was off, right? You can ask friends and family to who know you well to perhaps say, hey, give you some insight. Say, have you noticed this, and that around this time? What was going on? What was happening? And ask for their opinion if you can't seem to figure out or pinpoint exactly what it is. Okay. So what was step number 1? Go ahead, Sister Tuba, or whoever else. What was step number 1 again? I'm going to keep asking these.
Pinpoint your signs and like
Identifying, right? So identifying, yeah, pinpoint the signs is by identifying if you're actually stressed, because a lot of people don't know that they're stressed, right? They think that they're sick, or like they could attribute to physical illnesses when in fact that they are dealing with mental health issues. I've seen a lot of people as well where they've gone to the doctors, and because of some of the issues they're experiencing, the doctors go back to them and said, you're dealing with a mental health challenge here. It's stress. And so they come back to us and then we go through it. So number 1, identifying if you're stressed. Number 2, identifying the stressors, looking for the cause. Number 3, the reason. So we want to take a look at what are the reasons for our stress. This is a little bit challenging because it requires us to do that reflection, right? That deep introspection. So asking questions, how is this event or situation demanding or threatening for me? Sometimes our answer to this question is that the event or situation doesn't really coincide with our beliefs, our values, our expectations, our needs, wants, and desires, right? So an example here I always like to use is honesty. All right. So if you are being lied to, for example, there's a disparity, right? And that in itself is the root of our stress here. Is that a conflict of values here? Honesty is important to you, and that wasn't honored. So This is where it doesn't coincide with your beliefs of honesty and your values of honesty, right? Sister, what could you think of that could possibly be a root cause for your stress when we look at this example here? What do you find causes your stress?
I think in terms of what causes my stress, I think it goes back to what you said about perfection.
Okay.
Like having to want everything perfect. And I think, and I guess,
Oh, you've muted yourself.
of
So
course, I did.
perfectionism, yeah, goes back to
Yeah,
that.
perfection. And I'm gonna get a little bit personal, but I think I'm sure a lot of hijabis face this as well. But someone who is visibly Muslim, sometimes when you're public speaking in front of non-Muslims, or even at work when you're presenting, that idea that you have to be perfect, because if you don't, it's not going to be, oh, that girl Tuba. No, it's going to be that girl who wears a hijab. So I feel like
A lot of
sometimes
pressure, yeah.
there's a lot of pressure. So I think that causes a lot of
Expectation.
anxiety,
So maybe
expectations.
expectations, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a really great example. Thank you for sharing that. And it's really important to recognize and be able to identify the reasons for our stressors so that we can eventually get to it, which then leads us to number 4. But I'm going to go back and ask, what was number 1, 2 again? Number 1 was identifying if we're
Identify
stressed.
the stressors. Yeah.
If we're stressed. Number 2, identifying
Oh, the
the
stressors.
stressor.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
identify the stressors.
And number 3 is identifying the
The
reason.
reason.
And then number 4, selecting a strategy and doing something about it, right? Or like a strategy and applying it. So there are 3 levels to this. Level 1, if you can do something about the stressor, you do it. And I have this really great resource. If you message me after, then I'll put it. Actually, I'll look it up as I'm speaking, and I'll put it in the. I don't know. Can you click on links when we put them in chats? Not sure, huh? But we have this really great tool at Carleton University, and it's the 50 proven stress reducers. I really like them because it applies that concept. If you can do something about it right away, do it. Small little things that we can implement in our life that can go a long way in reducing our stress. For example, preparing ahead of time our food, preparing ahead of time what we're going to wear the next day for work or school, preparing our books, our bags, for school, because then, and making sure we get to bed early, setting up our alarm. The reason why we talk about this preparation is because you wake up late the next day, you're like, what do I have for breakfast? What am I having for lunch? What am I wearing to work? And then you're rushing out the door, you miss the bus. And, now we wake up wearing pajamas on the bottom and fancy clothes at the top, and we can get away with it, right? But inshallah, that's not going to be the case all the time. We've had different stressors, of course. But you see, with that kind of stressor, when you can prep ahead of time, your lunch, your breakfast, what you're going to wear, your bag, all of that, when you wake up the next day, you don't have to rush. You've prepared it, right? So I will get it ready, that link. If you just Google it, 50 proven stress reducers, Carleton University Health and Counseling Services, and we can get that link there, because I really love it. It's got some really quick strategies in there that you can do. So doing something about it could also mean going to a therapist, right? Getting rid of toxic people around you and changing lifestyle. So let's get into step 5 or level 2. So level 1 is something you can do about it right away, do it. Level 2 has to do with managing those signs and symptoms of our stress, right? So remember the stress print that you guys had? So we want to take a look at how we can manage all of these. So there's a really great, again, resource, and I'll send this inshallah to everybody later, where it gets into detail with all of this information here. But at the end, inshallah, we will be doing a mindfulness meditation using breathing, progressive relaxation, as well as visualization. Now, when we take a look at what breathing does, it's very powerful, because what breathing can do, it lowers the heart rate, right? So slowing down the heart rate. Awesome. You got it? Thank you so much. Yeah. I'll put up, I don't know, can you actually access the link? Oh, you can. Can you? Yeah. Thank you so much. So the link is in our chat for 50 proven stress reducers. Now I'll get you to look up another one also is the stress booklet. That's also in that link there. So that way you can refer to it when we take a look at this, because it gives you in detail how to do each one of these. So breathing exercises is really important. It helps us with breath control, right? And there's a variety of different exercises you can do. The one we're going to do is, which I'll teach later, is the 4-7-8 breathing. And the idea here is we're going to breathe in, counting up to 4. We're going to hold our breath at 7 and breathing through our nose, and then we're going to exhale out through our mouth at 8. And there's some breathing techniques where you breathe in like drawing a box and breathing out like so, holding and then releasing. So there's different ways of doing that. It's the one that I've used often. And like I said, what breathing does, it slows down the heart rate. It gets oxygen where it needs to go, right? One student told me one time, is that I feel really oxygenated. And I thought that was such a great way of explaining it, because this is what is actually happening. Oxygen is getting to where it needs to go. Great way of doing it also is when you do it in nature, right? When you go out in the green. And there's actually a study that was just released on our Carleton page today, where it took a look at how nature sounds can reduce our stress as well. The sounds of nature and what it
Oh,
does to
wow.
the body. Yeah. So if you just go to the main Carleton webpage, you'll find it straight up there on that page. And it's from the biology department, where they take a look at environmental sounds and nature sounds in general, how they've shown in their research to reduce stress, which is amazing. We've known this, but it's just great to have more research that talks about that, right? So imagine going out into nature and doing your breathing exercises along with breathing in the fresh air and so much oxygen, fresh out of the tree, right? So progressive relaxation, what that is all about, is a great overall tension relieving exercise, because what it does, it releases the different stressors we have in our body, right? Different parts. So, oh yeah, that's great that I see the link also there for the stress booklet. Then the stress booklet goes hand in hand with all the information I have here, because that's what I use with the students as well, and when I do this workshop. So here with progressive relaxation, the idea is that we're going to relax different parts of our muscles from head to toe or toe to head. I usually like working from the ground up, because we start by grounding ourselves, and you'll see that, inshallah, at the end when we do it. So it's outlined in that booklet, step by step, how to do it. Inshallah, I'll help demonstrate that as well. And the idea here is just like the domino effect. We want to go through the different muscles of our body, tensing and releasing, getting the blood flow there, and focusing our attention with no distractions on these different parts to sending energy and tensing and releasing. Like if you were to try that right now with me. So tense up your arms. Tense up your arms, just give it a few seconds. You're feeling the tension here in your fist and your arms, right? Now, if you release it, do you feel that release? Do you feel how the muscles relax and the blood flow? So imagine if you do this from head to toe. It's pretty powerful if you do it from head to toe, right? So inshallah, we'll be doing that. Meditation is looking at how to focus inwardly, right? And increasing our awareness inwardly by eliminating outside stimuli and trying to connect with ourselves. If you remember from last week's session, we saw that how salah is a form of meditation in itself, because we are mindfully focusing inwardly by connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and our relationship with Allah. So it also combines breathing techniques and muscle relaxation techniques as well. And it can be really easy for some people, and others it can be really challenging. And a great way to increase your focus in salah is to practice meditation, right? When you are able to do that, then you can also apply it to your salah to help with that. Visualization is also another favorite of mine that I like to do, and I use that often in my therapy with clients, because essentially what it's all about, it's a great stress reducing technique where you're using your imagination to visualize situations that make you feel good. So we'll do that again. We'll practice that at the end. So visualizing places you'd like to be, right? People you would like to be around, your favorite foods, your favorite places, right? So being able to visualize that and working through the senses, when we close our eyes and going through the senses can have a really huge impact on us, right? So imagine a really nice secluded beach, perhaps, right? mountains, nature. I always like to think about Ziyara, as hectic as that can be, right? But when you're under the dome, those of us who've been, and you experience that, we're in whatever holy place, there's such a peacefulness there, despite the shoving and pushing and the yelling and the dusters that come in our face, right? There's still something special about these places when you visualize yourself there. We'll practice this, inshallah. So if we move on here, we'll take a look at getting a massage. A massage can be incredible to help release the tension in our body. And the booklet that you have access to, it actually shows you step by step how to do it. So you and your family members can try that on each other with friends, right? And you find a Groupon and get a prescription from your doctor. That's covered by a lot of insurance through your work as well. And it's wonderful because the power of touch can go a long way as well, right? I'm sure you've heard of the example of when you hug somebody or hold them for 20 seconds, what happens is there's a release of oxytocin in your body, which is the love hormone, which is why you feel so great after you receive a really wonderful hug or you give that hug. I've gotten into the habit of like, all right, I'm going to meet somebody, not meet somebody, like a friend, or hold them for 20 seconds. I'm like, hold on, wait till the oxytocin releases, then we're good to go. And especially in a culture nowadays that, the pandemic culture, we're saying salam with our elbows and things like that. We're slowly getting back into connecting with people. Touch is so powerful. I mean, the people that we can touch, that are halal to us, of course, and our children, that the power of touch with our newborn babies, there's been studies shown of orphans in Romania where they were given food, they were changed, their diapers, they were given the basics, but they weren't really given that basic need of security with touch, right? And they've noticed that the children that were receiving that touch and had the extra massages throughout the day, they actually grew more healthier and had more body fat on them. I'm not saying you're going to get fat if you do that, no, or gain weight doing that, no, but growth of children when you had that, subhanallah, right? I can't cite the research. I don't remember at the top of my head, but it is a well-known one if you look it up. And there's a lot more to it, that, of course, than that. So touch is a very powerful healer as well when it comes to massage, and that your number one stress reducer, of course, is exercise, right? What happens, what would we say earlier with stress? There's a release of adrenaline and cortisol, right? What happens is in exercise with the built up stress hormones, there is finally a release of those stress hormones, right? The stress hormones are out of your system because endorphins are released, happy hormones are released into your system, which is why you feel so great after a run, dancing, aerobic exercise, just exercise in general, even yoga, right? What happens here again? The stress hormones are released, replaced by the endorphins, which are the happy hormones, right? It is one of the best ways, and it's the most natural way of reducing stress. And it's so powerful. I can attest to this. If I don't work out within a 2-week period, I can feel almost like electricity going up and down my legs. And that for me is one of my signs that I have to be aware of. If I don't take care of that, rather, the symptoms that's going to happen is going to be anxiety. Really like irritable, high tension, potentially even panic attacks. I used to have them when I was younger, and my body couldn't handle the stress and I didn't know what was going on. In fact, my first experience with panic attacks and stress was when I had it in high school. I was in a classroom with calculus, I remember, and everything was fine. I wasn't stressed in the moment, but the built up of stress leading up to that, I was fast tracking in high school. I wasn't taking fun courses. I wasn't sleeping well, eating well. I remember I would be in the girls' change room at lunchtime eating and doing schoolwork, and it just wasn't a fun time. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves, right? And I experienced that. And I was taken out on a stretcher to go to the children's hospital at the time. I was 16, 17 years old. 16, children's hospital. But that started my journey with understanding my body's response to stress. And exercise was one of those natural stress reducers that when I exercise, it gets rid of the stress. And I'm actually in a training program because our gyms have been on and off and they haven't been consistent. I'm working with a trainer to help me find a consistency of working out, healthy eating. And that has been phenomenal, subhanAllah, because it's naturally getting rid of the stress, but it's putting me in a structured order. In fact, especially working from home, I find that I end up wearing my workout outfits to motivate me so that I can, get into it kind of thing. I actually have that right now. I didn't get to my workout today. I'm like, I'm getting to it after the program because I've become committed to it. I'm used to it. I do 4 workouts a week. And if I don't do it, then, I'm not following my routine. But I'm also compassionate with myself sometimes when my body just cannot do it, especially after COVID and the stressors we all experience. You have to also be compassionate, is not push yourself far beyond. Okay. So working out could be as simple as starting walking twice a week for 20 minutes. It could be as simple as that. Right. And especially the weather's nicer now, not in maybe hot humidity, but in reasonably warm weather, go for a walk or a run. Watch your steps during the day. We have those apps now where we can monitor that. And that's a great way to start your exercise. All right. So moving on, just a little bit quickly here. So humor, hot bath, jacuzzi, hobbies. The idea here is self-care. Small things you can do can go a long way in reducing stress, right? So keeping those things in mind, inshallah. So before we move on to the next slide, what was step 1?
Identifying that you're stressed.
Great. Step 2.
Identify the stressors.
Good stuff. Step 3.
The cause of those stressors.
Yeah. And step 4.
And then managing those stressors.
Great. And level 1 was, do you remember?
I do quick ways to reduce stress.
Yeah. If you can do something about it,
mm-hmm.
do it, right? And you've got that list of 50 proven stress reducers. And then here is managing the signs and symptoms, which then leads us to the long-term stress management strategies. So let's get into this stuff. This is fun stuff that I do all the time in therapy with my clients, right? This is what therapy can help you work through. When people say, well, what's therapy all about? Why do people do that? What do you do in a counseling session? And we explored that in our first session, but let's take a look at what it means to actually go through some of these. So learning how to be a positive thinker, right? This is about the link of the way we think and the effect it has on our body, right? So the term, this is where mind-body connection, that term comes from, right? When people talk about this. So we know that the stress response in itself can precipitate a physical response, right? So just thinking about standing in front of a large group of people, like somebody mentioned earlier, can get your heart racing, the blood pressure up, right? And so this is that thought, that negative thought causes that. So we can see that positive state of mind can also have a positive effect in our health and well-being, right? So positive thinkers, they tend to expect the best, right? These are usually people who are known as optimists, right? So when bad things happen to the optimists, they consider it like, oh, it's something out of the norm. Pessimists, what do? They expect bad things to happen, right? So when these, they don't consider these things to be, or actually rather they think it's the norm when bad things happen all the time because that's their expectation, right? So when you have that view, and we look at it from the Islamic perspective as well, and I always like to use this hadith from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, tafa'alu bil khair tajidu, right? Propagate that khair, that goodness, you will find it, right? So it's putting out that positive vibes out into the world and learning how to be a positive thinker that way can bring that back to you, right? And so if you remember earlier when we took a look at stress-provoking ways of thinking, we saw that it was a negative way of thinking that causes that. Now, let me give you a really great example of how this is proven, right? So anybody around you right now, of those of you who are watching, if you can get somebody next to you to lay down on the floor, okay? And while they are laying down, we're just going to ask them temporarily to think of something negative. And you, while they're laying down, go to their foot and lift up their foot. What we notice when this happens here with that negative thought pattern, if you notice when you're lifting up the foot, it's actually quite heavy. It's really heavy to lift up that foot.
Oh, that's so interesting.
So put the foot back down. Now we're going to ask our volunteers who are laying down. Usually I do this in person and people are like, wow, that was a magic trick. I'm like, no, it's not a magic trick. It's the power of positive thinking taught to us by our prophet, right? What happens when you think of a positive event or anything joyful, which is what we do in visualization, and then lift up the foot, you notice that it's light. SubhanAllah, you notice that it's actually light, not very heavy, right? So this this challenge of learning how to be more positive thinker, more optimistic, is actually a very Islamic way of living life as well, right? So it's a very powerful one. So highly recommend. I know, Tuba, you're like, I'm going to try this after the next person I see. I'm going to make them lay down and try that foot example. And it's really powerful. I saw one of my friends once at a camp do it. I'm like, oh yeah, this one, we gotta use this in this part of the presentation because it links it really, really well. Learning how to end negative talk. So before we even open up our mouth, think about what you're going to say. If you notice you're going to take a negative perspective, let's stop, count for 10 seconds, look for the cues of those negative thinking, right? So words such as can't, don't, shouldn't. So this is negative language, right? Couldn't, won't, no, not, never. If these words are in that sentence, make it an effort to kind of stop in the mid-speech and then think of a positive way of saying it, right? Which then helps you look at it this way. So looking at how to think about things in a positive way, again, reiterating what we mentioned earlier, practicing positive language, right? So I'll give you some examples. I don't feel like eating chicken tonight. Actually, that's exactly how I feel because I've been enjoying the salmon, but the chicken that I have to have, alhamdulillah, with sugar, I'm kind of getting sick of it. But my trainer put me on a chicken salmon diet. So instead of saying I don't feel like eating chicken tonight, you'd say, I would prefer, and then fill in the blanks what you'd like to have instead. I'd prefer to have another piece of salmon. So balancing things like that, right? So another is, oh, this movie was horrible. I hated it. Terrible, hate. Those are pretty heavy language, like a heaviness in those language, in those words, right? So you can maybe change things around to, the costumes and the cinematography was great, but the story could have been developed more. Character development was pretty shallow, so something like that. He's such an idiot, right? Like how many times have we done riba on people like that? Like, come on, we got to admit it. We've done that, right? It's very stressful. So instead of saying something like that, we could maybe say something like, this guy would be more pleasant if they were less angry, if they had better social skills, if they didn't insult people. You see the difference there? So negative language, positive language. Disputing irrational beliefs. That's like a whole other session on its own because that's using cognitive behavioral therapy strategies. And the idea here is that I'll give you a quick strategy how we do it. And I don't have it online, but different strategies with disputing irrational beliefs can come with the words of, what's it called? Recognizing and replacing self-defeating thoughts, right? So the idea here, what you want to do is challenging those negative thoughts that come and all of these distortions. We have these distortions that we automatically say about ourselves, right? Whether it's looking at our perceptions, right? So all or nothing thinking, like we mentioned earlier, catastrophizing, blaming, making feelings facts, personalizing, fairy tale fantasy. These are distortions. These are things we naturally think of sometimes, and they're pretty heavy and negative. So what happens here is when let's say you remember a thought, and this is an actual tool that I teach my clients and we work with in terms of recognizing, replacing self-defeating thoughts. So I can grab the book here. Oh, it's right here. Right. So it's actually from this great book that I use a lot. It's called The Self-Esteem Workbook by Glenn Schiraldi. It is an excellent, excellent resource that I use with my clients for self-building and self-esteem. And the chapter when we took at disputing irrational beliefs is using this tool here, which I will show you. And I've actually used this a lot in programs. So you can take a look at it and very simple. So what we want to do is we want to take that event or irrational thought that's bugging us. Can you see it?
I think the PowerPoint screen is the bigger one. So
oh, that's true, huh? Then I'll just read it out loud because
perfect. That'd be great.
Yeah. So what you want to do is you want to describe the event, and you can do this in your head, right? So step 1, write the event. Step 2, the impact. What does it make you feel? So you describe the emotions. So you're feeling low, you're feeling depressed, worthless. Step 3, rate the intensity from 1 to 10. So chances are they're pretty high at this point, right? Then you want to analyze your thoughts, disputing those irrational beliefs by writing down the initial response of how you felt, right? So you can say things here, you're allowed to be negative. I'm such an idiot, oh, I'm such a loser, oh, I'm worthless. Here, only here you're allowed to say those things. Then you rate them out of 10. Chances are they're pretty high at this point, right? So then the next part, so step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, step 5, you rate them. Step 6 is you're going to go back and see, which fallacy is this? Am I blaming? Am I making feelings facts? Am I personalizing? Am I catastrophizing, et cetera, et cetera? And then step 7, we're going to do this part of the work, which is disputing that irrational belief by talking back with a more reasonable thought and to that distortion. So instead of saying, I'm such a loser, you could say things like, well, yeah, I did trip and fall. That doesn't make me a loser. It just makes me human, right? So talking back with a more reasonable thought. And then you rate that out of 10. Chances are at this point, these guys are high too. And then you go back and you re-rate the initial response. What we notice here is that it goes down, inshallah. And then we go back and we re-rate the intensity of the impact of the event, where we're feeling pretty worthless, we're feeling like a loser and low, and we notice that it has gone down, right? So this is a really great cognitive behavioral strategy technique that we can use to dispute our irrational beliefs, right? And so if you do go on to that booklet that you guys have access to now, it goes into a lot of depth looking at other ways of doing that. Now let's get to seeing problems as opportunities. This is one of my favorite strategies. And there's a hand movement. If you memorize this movement, you're going to memorize doing this. So let's go, all of us, like this. So this is a problem, right? The problem is coming towards us. Like it's about to hit us, right? So problems coming your way, what you want to do is reframe it, like turning the light bulb, right? And pushing it away, reframing it to an opportunity. So problem, reframe, opportunity, okay? And the idea here is when we see problems as an opportunity, it helps us perhaps build our self-esteem, learning to set our priorities, meeting new people, cutting out toxic people, right? Expressing our creativity, opening up our horizons, as well as setting boundaries, right? So instead of saying, and we know this Islamically, we've heard this a lot, instead of saying, why Allah, why did you do this to me? Why did this happen, et cetera, what we want to be doing is saying things like, how will I be better off without this? How in the Quran we have Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. It just came in my head and it left my head. Asa an tahabbuna shay'un wa huwa sharrun lakum. Asa an takrahuna shay'un wa huwa khayrun lakum. Verily you may love something and it's bad for you, and the vice versa. Verily you may hate something and it's good for you, right? And so asking the question, how will I be better off after this? How is this thing that I wanted didn't happen good for me, right? What can I learn in this process? So this process in itself, asking such questions, helps us in reframing that opportunity, right? That comes in the form of a problem. So this is, again, like I said, is a really powerful strategy. And I'll get you, for those who have the link, to go through. I'm just conscious of the time in terms of relabeling emotions. So rather than saying, I'm angry at everything, when in fact you want to look down, maybe we can do one day a workshop on anger management, because I actually have one on that. And it's a really great one in terms of learning how to manage our emotions, right? So learning how to relabel anger, when in fact you could be irritated or disappointed, looking at the root cause, right? Learning how to build skills. Time management is a huge one. Learning how to manage our time. That 50 proven stress reducer list, that can give you a lot of ideas on time management. Negotiating with our environment and people can also help us. Actual problem solving, communicating, right? Learning how to say things a certain way can really go a long way in helping us. And speaking with somebody, talking things out or writing things out, right? Journaling can go a long way as well. So let's look now at step 5. All right. So number 1, we said if we're stressed. Number 2, the cause. Number 3, the reason. Number 4, the management and 3 levels of it. And number 5, evaluating ourselves, right? So in a week or two, around 21 days, because Western psychology says it takes around 21 days to develop a good or bad habits. Islamic psychology from Imam Ali alayhi salam and I can't give you the reference because I don't remember the top of my head, but we know it's 40 days, right? There's a lot of barakah in the 40 days apparently. We see with Ziyarat Ashura, um, all sorts of things that we see, committing yourself for 40 days that can change behavior, right? So Western psychology, and I've seen that in terms of developing good habits. Like right now, I can tell you, a month and a bit doing my training program, I've gotten used to and changing my bad habits of eating into healthier habits. Not that I was really bad before, but just because I have a goal in mind of what I want to work towards, especially because of the havoc of COVID and the whole pandemic. And I wanted to try something different. Is when you develop those habits and you do them for 2 to 3 weeks, you notice that they become routine after that, right? So if you try this, if you try what we've looked at today for 2 to 3 weeks, okay, ask yourself these questions after. Am I still feeling stressed? No? You've got it. You've done something to change that. Give yourself a pat on the back. If you notice you're still highly stressed, then perhaps you want to go through and reassess to see what can really help you, because it's a trial and error, right? It's not the same for everybody. And perhaps even at this point too, that I find with people when we're taking a look at how to take care of these things, is that it could be a physical illness, right? Or if you go to a doctor, they can help you with that as well. All right, so alhamdulillah, we've gotten through quite a bit through this. We are almost done. After we've done our evaluation, what we want to do is stress proof ourselves. How do we do that? Well, we want to make sure that we're eating well, right? We want to make sure that we're physically active. Each one of these is a whole session on its own, right? But the idea with eating well is making sure, inshallah, that you're getting your 3 main meals a day, right? Making sure you're covering all the food groups. So this is recommendations by Canada's food guide, right? Making sure you've gotten your complex carbohydrates, your fresh fruits, your vegetables, your dairy, as well as your protein, right? You want to see color on your plate, not the deep fried brown orangey color of food that we kind of have in our Desi and Arab culture, right? We want to have fresh, healthy foods on our plates in bright, vibrant colors, right? And having those spread throughout the day, as well as snacks throughout the day. Some people do smaller meals throughout the day, right? So things like that can go a long way in helping you manage that. And even preparing a meal plan, I find goes a long way in those, 50 proven stress reducers. It's creating a meal plan for the week. What are you going to have with the family? People taking turns cooking, or perhaps batch cooking, which is what I did yesterday. So I'm set for the next few days with my meal planning, that I've got my food ready, got my salmon, my chicken, my rice, my vegetables, and I'm good to go. I even went ahead and boiled eggs for the next few days because I have a few of those every day. So I just then peel them and I'm good to go, rather than, can you imagine having to sit there and wait for your eggs every day? They're ready. If you're okay with cold boiled eggs, go for it, So there's all sorts of different strategies you could do to making your foods ready, prep ahead of time, whether it's oatmeal, whether it's smoothies and soups. You can cook a whole bunch of stuff, freeze them if you're busy with work. Some people do that. They'll take, a weekend out of the month where they're going to just cook a whole bunch of stuff, meats and chickens, and put them in the freezer. Then you can just defrost them and use them easily in other meals. We can chat on that one-to-one if people have questions, but I spent a lot of time talking about healthy eating with my clients, because that is one of the biggest issues that we have when it comes to managing our stress. We're not eating well. We're not hydrating ourselves well. We are taking in a lot of sugar and oils and caffeine, right? Getting rid of caffeine. I love my chais and coffees and qahwas and all that. So I switch over to decaf as much as I can, because what caffeine does is does this. I'm naturally prone to anxiety. You have to know what your stress response is. If you're going to have something caffeinated, be ready for this to happen. Okay, so just being aware of those things. Being physically active, we spoke about that earlier. I won't get into it here. So making sure you have your exercise to get rid of the stress hormones, a good night's sleep. I used to do workshops on sleep with students, and this is where memory comes in. This is where concentration, this is where the information you learn becomes imprinted in your brain. This is where cell rejuvenation and regeneration occurs. When you get into that deep, rapid eye movement sleep of the REM cycle, this is where you get that solid sleep. You want to get 7 to 9 hours, depending on your age group. Children, more than that, up to between 10 to 12. And if you're hitting less than 5 hours a night, 6, 7 hours a night, you're going to, students can get away with that for a bit, but then you'll notice the crash after. I'm a horrible night sleeper. I love nights. I'm a night owl. Doesn't work well when you have to get up early, right? So weekends can be a disaster, and it takes a while to readjust, but it's really important to be aware of good night sleeping habits, right? Eliminating substances, right? why I mention alcohol here is because we know it happens in the Muslim community as well, right? But it also can have a really negative impact on your overall well-being, on top of it being haram, which is probably why it's haram, right? Establishing and maintaining healthy relationships, getting rid of toxicity. And I know this becomes really hard and challenging with families when it could be a family member that's toxic, right? So keeping in mind salat al-raham, we spoke about that last time, just doing the wajib, communication and maintaining respect, keeping positive attitude. Remember, this is sunnah, smile, it's sunnah, right? Building skills, being creative, and applying some Islamic counseling practices, right? Can you perhaps suggest a few? Anybody in our audience, or Sister Tuba? If you watched last session, you remember that we spoke a lot about some Islamic counseling practices. What are some of these that you could include? Perhaps, go ahead.
One, it's not Islamic counseling, but one thing that I wanted to mention was positive affirmations. It
Yes.
sounds like silly. Like I know it sounded silly to me when I first started, but like it's very helpful. Like it's like I just put on like a YouTube video, just search for positive affirmations and listen to it,
Wonderful.
and it's really nice.
It's powerful because it's about
Hmm.
maintaining that positivity. تفاءلوا
Hmm.
بالخير تجدوه, right? Propagate that goodness, you'll find it. Absolutely positive affirmations are incredibly powerful. That's really good. And continuing with anything that is healthy and halal and that can propagate that positive energy. Why not, right? Good stuff. Thank you for sharing that, sister. Anybody else who's listening, if you want to share that? Somebody's saying listening to others who are seeking counsel without judgment. Yeah, yeah. The judgment can cause a lot of stress upon yourself and others. Thank you so much for sharing that. So here's some tips for making changes. If you've been really empowered today and you want to apply some of these strategies, we always advise to start with the changes slow, because you could be so motivated and you want to do everything at once and it's really hard. I can attest to this. When I started making changes in my lifestyle recently, is that I wanted it to jump too fast and I didn't have all the resources at once, and I just felt out of hand. And finally, when I got my food together, got what I needed to, and it just slowly making that change. Right now, I'm a pro. Even my trainer's like, yeah, you got this. Whereas the first week, I wasn't really up to what I needed to do, but it takes time, right? Start with the easier, smaller things first, because then it can build confidence to take on more challenging changes. Don't get discouraged by setbacks. These are opportunities for learning, right? And we can find out from others how they do things, but don't compare, right? Sometimes you can save yourself a lot of energy and time by learning from people how they do things. I really love meal planning, getting ideas from people how they make certain dishes, and then I'll cheat and make a fast version of it, whether it's our cultural foods and things like that. I've definitely learned around over the years how not to spend hours in the kitchen with traditional meals that I just love, but just take too much time, right? So this is what I mean by finding out how others doing it and modifying it yourself, but don't compare yourself. Everybody is going to have their own process, right? So what we've done today, we've looked at some basic tips of maintaining healthy lifestyle for good mental health, right? Obviously, there's so much more details out there with books and resources. I highly recommend talking to your local distress center supports, or if you need more support, talking immediate, that is, but talking to your doctor, seeking other counseling supports like Nasiha, we talked about in our first session, talking to our local trusted imams, chefs, or even community supports, inshallah. All right. So do we have any questions, any comments before we start our meditation, inshallah?
Yes, so we do have some. Let me just pull it up here. Did we want to do the questions, all the questions now?
Yeah, let's do the questions now, because then I
Yeah.
want to finish with the meditation and we'll wrap up from there, inshallah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so we actually do have one question. So, and this, the pandemic has brought on anxiety and fear and doubt. Although I read duas, pray, and read surahs to cope, what else can I do so even in a nerve-wracking situation, I can remain calm and not think about worst case scenario? Jazakallah for your insight.
So I think this is where perhaps speaking with the therapist can help us process that a little bit better. because there's no black and white answer to that. It's a process, right?
Mhm.
And do you mind just repeating the last part of the question, sister?
Yeah, for sure. So although I read duas, pray, and read surahs to cope, what else can I do so even in a nerve-wracking situation, I can remain calm and not think of worst case scenario?
Okay. So inshallah, the meditation we're going to do today will be able to help you as a tool that you can turn to when you are feeling stressed and overwhelmed. You can take these strategies that we're going to do and apply them. The idea here is if you try it for the first time, it may not work in a moment of stress. Whereas if you incorporate this into a practice, like if you do it several times a week, or when you are stressed and you do this, the breathing, or let's say the muscle tension, relaxation, they're going to work. But if you try them for the first time and your body's not hasn't made that mind body connection that this is actually something that can help you, it's not really going to connect to it helping you in the moment. But if you kind of train yourself ahead of time to practicing it, then inshallah, when you do need to turn to it, it will help you with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Inshallah. Okay.
I think that is it with questions. Let me just refresh this one more time. Yeah, alhamdulillah, I think that's it with questions.
We're all good?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to stop the share on that, and I'm going to bring the other share. Just give me a moment.
Oh, I
So
do have one more question.
sure,
I'm
go
so
ahead.
sorry. One
No
just
worries.
came in.
Yeah.
I have different fears. Sometimes it's thinking about the future. Sometimes it's about my skills. Sometimes I'm afraid of animals, bugs in the house. I try to pray and focus on facing on the fear, but I don't seem to get over it. Do you have any tips? I
I
think
talked to
tips
your
on how
doctor.
to face fear.
Yeah, I would maybe talk to your doctor about that. Maybe there's some more deep-rooted fears that exploration with a good therapist can help you work through that, inshallah. So please talk to your doctor about that a little bit more. If you have a counselor, then you can bring it up with a counselor to explore those. And at the same time, this is where we can use our faith to help us kind of work through it, right? In terms of tawakkul and remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the ultimate protector with our fears, that Allah is greater than these fears. So when we kind of reframe these challenges and problems in that perspective, that Allah is the ultimate protector, is greater than all of these fears and things that kind of make us, worry, then that can be also part of our healing, right? And putting that trust, right? And lifting it up. So using these types of Islamic counseling practices can really help us work through our uh, worries. I'm thinking in Arabic, الوهواس, like worries and concerns, right? Yeah. So hopefully that
Good
can help.
points.
Yeah. But definitely talk to your doctor if they can do a mental health assessment to see maybe I'm not saying you are, but I'm saying maybe there's some tendencies of maybe obsessive compulsive thoughts, because I find that people who are constantly worried about, let's say, najasa, or constantly focusing, like hyper focusing on certain specific things, maybe there needs to be a little bit more in-depth therapeutic work with a psychiatrist or a specialist to kind of alleviate those stressors a little bit more.
Fair enough.
Well, these are great questions. Thank you so much for sharing them. Any other questions?
Let me just do a quick refresh. And no, alhamdulillah, we're good to go.
We are, inshallah. All right. So what do you see here on the screen? The flower?
Yes, a yellow
Okay.
flower.
All right. So I'm going to turn on the sounds, inshallah, here. Can you hear the sound?
Yes.
Can you hear my voice as well?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So inshallah, for the last part of our session and our series, we are going to be doing this amazing mindfulness meditation that I tell you, from all of the places around the world that I've been when we've done this, in large groups and small groups, men and women. I absolutely love seeing how people respond to this. So like, you're going to be the one that I'm only going to be seeing respond to this today. But I'd love to hear
Good.
feedback, inshallah, from our audience as well. to help with the feedback for this. And I love seeing how some people actually start laying down in the masjid, just putting themselves in an absolutely relaxed position so this can really work for them. So what we're going to do is start with the blessed name of Allah. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In His name I begin. And what I ask of you, my dear brothers and sisters, is to either lay down on the floor, on the bed, on the couch, wherever you may be. Those of you who are sitting, sit comfortably by grounding your feet on the floor. If you're laying down, just feel the back of your heels on the floor. You're welcome to keep your eyes open or close your eyes. We have these beautiful visualizations of nature in front of us. But you can also close your eyes and go into your mind's eyes. And what we're going to do next is, after grounding your feet, just wiggle your toes and feel the effect of the ground pushing up against your feet. Or if you're laying down, just feeling your feet move. And we're going to start with our breathing before we go on into our muscle tension relaxation. We're going to start by taking a deep breath in through our nose, counting up to 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're going to fill up your lungs as much as you can. We're going to hold our breath to 7, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And you're going to release now through your mouth, counting up to 8. Now you're going to repeat this, filling up your lungs with your nose, counting up to 4. And then you're going to hold your breath, counting to 7. And then you're going to release. Pretend you're deflating your lungs like a balloon out through your mouth. Now we're going to breathe like this a few times till you catch and find your rhythm. Breathing in through your nose, holding in, and breathing out. Keep breathing in, holding, and releasing until you find the rhythm that you are comfortable with. And it doesn't have to be 4, 7, 8. It could be shorter or longer. The more you practice this, the more you find that you can hold your breath in longer, because your lungs are a muscle that is being exercised, and you can take in more breath and you can release out more as well. So now that we have found our breathing rhythm, we're going to go back down to our feet. And after grounding ourselves, we are no longer feeling the floor, but rather we are one with the floor. And as we breathe in, continue breathing in, we're going to now tense and release the muscles in our calves and our ankles. So we're going to tighten up the muscles, and then you're going to release them. Tighten up the muscles, going all the way up your leg, your shins, your knees, your lower thigh, tensing and releasing. Tensing and releasing. And we're going to go up to our mid-thigh, our lower body, front, the back, till we reach our abdominals, our lower back, our stomach. Now each area of your body that you tense and release, notice if it's still tense afterwards, and if it is, spend a little bit of time more on that muscle that you find that is tense. Or go back to the place where you find the tension is right there. So you're going to tense, and then you're going to release. You're going to tense, you're going to release it. Now we're going up to our stomach, our backs, front of our rib cage. Remember, you are continuing with your breathing as you are tensing and releasing. Perhaps as you are tensing, you are breathing in. And hold the tension as you're holding your breath. And then release the tension as you breathe out. And as we move up to the middle of our back, our upper back, our neck, our shoulders, come back down to our biceps, our triceps, our elbows, our forearms, tensing and releasing. And now to our wrists, turn them around, tensing and releasing our fingers, wiggle your fingers, your palm, twisting that around, tensing and releasing. Going back up to your arms. And as we're going through each of our muscle areas, wonder at the wonder and blessings of the bodies that God has given us as an amana to protect and preserve and take care of. Mind, body, heart, and soul. And as we go up to our neck, to our face, our jaws, the back of our head, the different muscle parts of our head, holding our skull, our brain, the executive functioning of our bodies, and the different parts of our face, our chin, our jaws, our noses. Tense and release all of these areas, your ears, the forehead. Tense and release, tense and release those muscles. And wherever you may be feeling a little bit more tension, give it a little bit more tension and then a little bit more release. And now that we have gone through all of our body, different muscles of our body, remember now the beautiful rib cage that you have in that area that's holding your heart. And wonder at how your heart pumps in blood in and out 24 hours a day from the moment that we are conceived to the moment we take our last breath. How this heart of ours works and keeps us alive. And now with every single important part of your body, send love and light with salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad, with the blessings that we have to all of these areas of our body. And be grateful whether we are healthy or not so healthy, whether we are young or old, or have mental or physical challenges. We're grateful for what we do have that it is working. And the things that are not, we work on them and try to maintain and help as best as we can. Now that we have appreciated the gift that Allah has given us of life through our body and relaxed every single muscle from head to toe, let's now go inward. And now let's visualize as we meditate and focus on a memory, on a person, on an image that you see in front of you, or anything that brings you joy, happiness, or gets rid of any of the negativity around you, where you just feel okay. And now, as we visualize a place, perhaps, a memory, a person who perhaps is no longer with us, or with us but not with us right now, who brings us that joy and happiness. Notice how perhaps you are smiling. Notice how this memory, this person makes you feel. Perhaps it is a special place, a holy place. Whatever image you are visualizing right now, try to smell, to feel, to hear, to taste perhaps. Engage with these emotions right now that you are focusing on, with the memory, with the vision that you have, how it makes you feel. Keep breathing. Breathe in that beautiful energy that we have created right now, with this beautiful vision, and you focus on that vision. Breathe it in, bring it close to your heart and your soul, and breathe out all the negativity, the tension, breathe it all out. And again, breathe in and embrace the beauty of this vision, of what it makes you feel. Hold on to that beautiful vision, remembering the emotions, the thoughts, embrace them close to your heart, and know that whenever you're in a place of mind and state where you are not happy, where you are stressed, that you have the power with Allah's blessing, subhanahu wa ta'ala, to come to this safe place that you have now created. The wonder, the gratitude, the awareness, that inward awareness that you have now connected yourself with. And connected yourself to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His glory and His mercy that He showers upon us all the time. And we are not aware because we are caught up in this material world. being aware that whenever you need Allah, He is there. He is closer to you than your jugular vein. He is that close to you. And when you are in that place, this is where you can bring yourself and connect to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the Prophet and the Ahlul Bayt alayhi wassalam. And take from their love and from their mercy and energize yourself to face the challenges of this world in our everyday lives. Now, breathe it all in, this beautiful energy and this awareness and this awakening that we have all experienced right now. Again, hold it close to your heart, in your mind's eye, in your soul. Be aware of your breathing. And again, be aware that you have the power, that whenever you need to, you can come to this safe space that you have created. Now take your hands and put them over your heart, where you feel your soul is perhaps, and hold yourself as though you were hugging until you feel that beauty of the release of the oxytocin in our body. And feel Allah's touch within your soul and His power through the beautiful words of the Quran, the Holy Quran al-Kareem, in our reflection of connecting to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, physically, spiritually, mentally, emotionally. Hold that close to your heart with your hands. Close now with our breathing. We're closer now to our awareness. Now tense and release the muscles of your entire body, and especially noticing your feet now, where you may not have noticed the floor underneath you, but now as you wiggle your feet and your toes, you notice the floor is underneath you. You perhaps notice the light in the room around you and the sounds as you slowly open up your eyes, stretching the muscles in your body, becoming aware of the environment around you. And opening your eyes and seeing what's in front of you. And ending this beautiful meditation, perhaps rocking your body a little bit back and forth, easing movement back into it comfortably, and ending this beautiful spiritual connection that we have created with the salawat ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad wa ajil farajah. I hope that everybody was impacted as much as I felt impacted this time. SubhanAllah. I was quite surprised this time, just how this felt. Felt amazing. How about you, sister? How did you
I feel sleepy.
You got sleepy.
Yeah,
That's
no,
a great
alhamdulillah.
sign. That's
It's
wonderful.
I feel like sometimes like I feel like when you go through like, even like a massage, like you have this feeling of not feeling anything and like floating in a sense, and like that's how I felt. Like it took me a few seconds when you asked me that question. It took me a few seconds to reply because I'm just like, wait, let me get back to my senses.
And that's
Alhamdulillah,
often
subhanallah, that was.
yeah, we slowly came back to our senses
Mhm,
because probably we floated away, we felt sleepy,
mhm,
yawning perhaps, and these are all great indicators that this was working for you, inshallah.
mhm.
How did our
SubhanAllah,
audience feel? Oh, they're saying that amazing feelings. Oh, that's wonderful.
SubhanAllah, no, it was awesome.
And you see
It was
how
beautiful.
amazing it is. Yeah, to connect spiritually. You can use, inshallah, I'm working on a series of meditations, exploring different aspects of ourselves, learning how to do muscle tension and how to breathe. And because I've been doing this one for years and I'm looking at, it's been a while that I've been working on it, but inshallah, I can release those and you can check them out. My colleague actually and friend, Sister Anisa Diab, she also has done some really good ones as well. So you can check those out as well in the meantime.
Oh wow.
Yeah. And, you know, when you go through this process, it doesn't take a lot of time and just being very introspective like that. You could use even listening to du'as, you can do this technique, right? I love
Mhm,
this specific sound that we're using here. I find it very calming and relaxing. I love the nature scenes, but the sound of it is so spiritual and airy. Like I picture myself off in ziyarah.
mhm.
What were some of the visions that you got?
It's funny because like when you had said like imagine things that make you happy, the first thing that came to my mind was my nephew.
That's
And like my niece and my nephew, that's the first thing. And then when you said like imagine a place, it was when I went to Ziyarah, specifically the Arba'in walk.
Allah.
So it was alhamdulillah, it was alhamdulillah, it was a beautiful experience.
Yeah, that we could relive beautiful experiences.
Mm-hmm.
Or see, this is the power of when we use our thoughts and our emotions when we're relaxed, how to connect with people, memories, places, even though we are not physically there. So it's really, really powerful. Really powerful. And it's easy. We can do it anytime. There's a really great app. Let me see what it's called. Sabr.
Oh,
Sabr.
nice.
Yeah, and I took I was reviewing it. I didn't finish the review of it, but the developers asked me to check it out. It's from our Sunni brothers and sisters, but they've got some really great content in there, so you can check that out as well. Tell them that if you go on their Instagram page, you can tell them that I referred you to it. um, yeah, so there's all sorts of resources now that we have available in our communities, alhamdulillah, to help
Mm-hmm.
take what we already know from our own faith and apply it in these types of practices. And this is something I've been doing for years with university students. Mind you, I wouldn't necessarily incorporate the faith aspect into it, but they all connect into to it in their own ways. And I found at the end of
Right.
the session, they would tell me that, oh, I felt I was floating. I felt I was outside of my body. You know, I had to be brought
Mm-hmm.
into it. And this is another indicator of relaxation. The more you practice this technique over time, the more your body connects to it as relaxation. So when you do it, it's already, yes, yes, oh, I'm going to go to that space again that I like. Very powerful. The mind, the heart, the body and soul, when we connect it all like that. And this is why our mental health matters. Our mental health absolutely matters when it comes to taking care of ourselves with all aspects. And we've done that, mashallah. In this series, inshallah, we've covered in terms of what mental health is all about, how it impacts us, misconceptions. We've taken a look at our core beliefs from our faith and how they are related and connected to psychology and counseling. And alhamdulillah, today we summed it up with taking a look at how we take care of our mental and physical health with our stress. And now you have become these great ambassadors out in your community, inshallah, to talking about mental health, helping people, and doing their absolute best, reaching their full potential, right? And reaching this beautiful space of spirituality as well, inshallah.
Manala, that was incredible. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your wisdom with us. We really hope to have more seminars like these in the future.
Inshallah.
It was an honor to have you, and we really appreciate you joining us and sharing all the information and all the knowledge that you have.
Well, that was my honor. It was an honor. I just wish it was in person, but inshallah, we can do this in person one day.
Next time, inshallah, our next one will be
Inshallah.
inshallah.
And anybody who has any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out through your community. You can reach out to me as well. And inshallah, like I said before, I don't do private practice as I have full time with my work, but I'd be more than happy to connect you and refer you to other supports and other counselors who I know are private practice practitioners and who are Muslim from our communities as well, inshallah. So
Fair enough.
thank you so much for asking me to do this for your community. For me, it's such an honor to do that and share this because I'm so passionate about it, and I want people to be happy to reach their full potential. As every single one of you are amazing human beings in your own potential, in your own capabilities, in your own way. Inshallah, maybe our next session we can do it on empowerment, huh? And
Absolutely.
confidence, inshallah, ya Rab. And I'm at your service. Please remember all of us in du'as, these holy days as we head into the days of Hajj. You know, not a lot of us are going this year or there right now, but inshallah, you know, remember us in these days, Arafah, and of course,
Inshallah.
Haram is just around the corner. I do want to give, I do want to make an announcement that inshallah with Hidayat TV, we'll be doing monthly mental health programs that you can watch for, inshallah. We'll be posting about that. So for those of you who are interested in following mental health programs with myself and my host, Sister Sakina, so you can watch for it on Hidayat TV. It is in English,
Oh
and
wow.
youth and for the elders as well, for anybody's welcome to join. We've already had a few episodes out, and from those pilots, we decided to do a monthly program, inshallah, for our
Oh
community.
wow.
Yeah.
SubhanAllah.
So you
That
can
that is amazing. It's on your it's in the Muslim counselor, right? Like it's linked there.
Hidayat TV, Hidayat TV.
Oh, Hidayat TV. Okay.
So it'll be on Hidayat TV, inshallah. You can watch for that monthly. Inshallah, we'll be announcing it as well. And we'll have the programs live, but then you can catch them on YouTube after because of the time difference. It's going to be pretty early
Fair.
for us. But we'll be announcing the programs ahead of time, inshallah, so you can catch them. That you can find on the Muslim Counselor. But
Okay.
inshallah, yeah, so I wanted to announce that today. So for those of us who are interested in continuing learning more different in-depth discussions, check that out, inshallah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And once again, thank you so much for joining.
God bless.
Um, to the audience, thank you for participating and engaging. I think I've said this a bazillion times, and I'm going to say this again. This is our journey. This is our journey to learn about mental health, and it does not end here. This is just the beginning. There's still so much to learn and apply what we have learned. Sister Brock has shared so many resources that we can check out, so many books that we can check out. So let's get informed. We need to be aware of our surroundings and be more open-minded about the people around us. Um, so let's, as a community, get informed and be the change that we want to see in the world. So thank you so much. I do want to end, like always, with Dua Imam Zamana. So if you would all like, I can't hear you, but if you would all like to join me. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma kulli waliyaka al-Hujjat ibn Hassan.
Salawat.
صلواتك عليه وعلى آبائه في هذه الساعة وفي كل ساعة وليا وحافظا وقائدا وناصرا ودليلا وعينا حتى تسكنه أرضك توا وتمتع فيها طويلا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم صل على محمد وعلى محمد. Jazakallah, thank you so much. We really hope to see you again.
Inshallah, my pleasure, my dear sister. It was thank you for hosting these programs and being an amazing facilitator and my buddy online in these programs. Inshallah, we get the honor of
My
meeting
pleasure.
in person, inshallah, one day.
Allah.
Inshallah. Take care, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum.
You too, take care. Khalafis.
Hafiz. Take care.